Back when I decided to start taking YouTube seriously in 2018, I had this car, a 2008 Mazda Miata, and it has been sitting for the last 2 or 3 years because the engine rod bearings decided to take a little bit of a vacation. And I haven't had the time, space, or ability to fix it. Judging by my comment section, people like my channel for 2 reasons. They like to see me doing things with cars that they can do themselves on a reasonable budget, and they like seeing me working on cars. And 50% of those people are about to be really disappointed because I didn't do any of the work on this car, which is what makes it so brilliant. The Ford Fusion is truly one of the cars of all time, and they have an interesting quirk where they get wrecked more frequently than they have mechanical issues, which means their powertrains are plentiful, in low demand, and pretty much worthless. Happily, the Ford Fusion, of all things, actually shares an engine family with the 3rd-gen Mazda Miata, the Duratec/Mazda MZR line of 4-cylinder engines. And that means that a Ford Fusion 2.5 is effectively a direct bolt-in. That means not only can you get these engines for incredibly low prices, but any shop could do the swap because it's basically the same thing as just replacing the engine with a like-for-like component. But the big thing here is the benefit of that extra half a liter. The 2.5 doesn't make a whole lot of peak horsepower over the 2 liter. I think maybe like an extra 6 horsepower peak, but where it makes a lot more of a difference is between 2 and about 3,500 RPM. And in that range, it's making something like 40 more horsepower. That is a difference that you can feel. And what's neat about this is the engine bay looks really stock because effectively it is. A few parts need to be swapped over to make a front wheel drive engine work in this rear wheel drive configuration, and the oil pan needs to be transferred over from the original Mazda engine, but beyond that, it's just remove old engine, replace new one. I didn't have the time or the energy to go dumping the entire engine and transmission out the bottom of this car in my tiny little shop, so I did this the lazy way, and I paid a shop to do it. The shop in question is Lauer Auto, owned by my buddy Jay, who actually has a 2.5 swapped NC Miata track car. So he came over, we got the car started, eventually, and then got it loaded up onto his trailer. Also, eventually. Then the car disappeared for a while and they got the engine swapped for me. I later came down with a laptop and did some DIY tuning to get the ECU happy with the new displacement. Okay, so let's talk about what all of this cost, and I'm gonna sit down because, you know, standing, who's got the time? So first we've got the engine, and this is the most surprising part because I got the engine from a local recycler here called Auto Recyclers of Kansas with 20,000 miles on it out of a wrecked Ford Fusion for $300. That's not $300 you pull it price, that was $300. They had it sitting on a shelf. They took it off the shelf with their forklift and put it in the back of my truck. Engine. These engines are so common and so worthless because they don't break. It's absolutely fantastic. Then we've got $66 in gaskets, $200 for competition Roadster Sport motor mounts. I just felt like those were probably the best move given the extra torque on hand, and they're not too harsh. You know, shift knob shakes a little bit more. $140 AC Delco battery because, well, I let the car sit for quite a while. $313 at the shop for fluids and incidentals, $36 for a balance shaft delete kit, which also makes the engine run a little harsher, but that's necessary for it to fit with this oil pan. They just don't have balance shafts when they're in a longitudinal configuration like this. We've got a $37 diamond washer kit, and I do not understand what diamond washers are, but they're necessary. They go on the camshafts, and I think the crankshaft, and again, they help it work in a longitudinal configuration. Super easy to install though. And then we have, while we were in there, a couple things, a $349 Exity stock replacement clutch kit. And I think I did a new radiator, I don't remember though. And then the actual labor, it was $400 in labor to prep the new engine. I had them do all the gaskets and stuff. It was, you know, might as well. And then $1,800 in labor to actually install the engine. As far as the tuning, I did that myself. If you look up Speeps, S-P-E-P-S, there is a big thread on Miata.net about how to tune these cars yourself with just like a $50 cable. It is super straightforward. If you know anything about tuning, this is an absolute dawdle. And you also get some cool things like launch control, no lift shift, auto rev match, I think, if you want those sort of things. I just got the 2.5 running pretty acceptably. It's quicker than my buddy's 2.5 swap, so that's cool. And got the, you know, the fuel trims are all within acceptable spec. So the total for all this was $3,641. When my engine went out, I did some looking around at other options, and a stock used replacement engine for this would have been about $3,000 to $4,000. So for the cost of just buying a stock engine to put back in here, I got all this. I got an upgrade. How's that for value? And this all gets way more interesting when you consider that Miatas, especially from 2006 to 2009, with a blown engine, are kind of common and really cheap, because those NC1 generation 2 liters did not have staked rod bearings, which means they spin very easily. And so this sort of thing is not all that uncommon, which is why those 2 liters are so dang expensive. And also because I don't think they're shared with any other cars. So for the cost of the car and the cost of an engine and a swap, you end up with an absolute performance bargain for under $10,000. And to me, the 2.5 is how the NC should have come from the factory. I don't know why they didn't. I mean, the parts were there. The 2.5 existed at the time, but here we are, I guess. And probably the best part of it is the effect that you'll have if you have a limited slip differential, because the amount of torque the 2.5 makes, like I said, 40, 60 horsepower at 2,000 RPM, your rear tires won't survive. You will end up sideways all of the time if you have an LSD. If you don't have an LSD, one of your tires will be bald very quickly. It makes the car so much more enjoyable because this chassis is so good at getting sideways. It just didn't really have the power to do so on command until you do this. Swapping the car is all well and good, but it's been blown up for upwards of 2 years now, so I have no idea what it drove like before to really give a good comparison. Fortunately, my buddy Jacob has a mechanically bone stock 2006 2-liter NC1, so I invited him over to give this thing a rip and give us his impressions on what sort of a difference this cheap engine swap actually makes. Get in the air conditioning, which I immediately turned down because microphones.
Oh my god, your clutch feels weird compared to mine.
It's a brand new factory clutch.
I guess 125,000 miles does wear them down a bit.
So let's see. I'm trying to think of all the differences this car would have. We've got you said yours has coilovers?
Yeah, I have coilovers.
Oh, okay. What coilovers are those?
Owens.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you went full big money like Jay did.
The previous owner did.
I've just got Coney shocks and progress springs, RX-8 sway bars. I think it's good for a street car. I wouldn't do that combination on a track weapon though.
Yeah, I don't think a Miata really needs much.
So short shifting like this is where a lot of the difference is going to be apparent, because at 2,000 to 3,000 RPM like this, I think it's making 50 more horsepower than the 2-liter.
It's noticeable, I will say. Right off the rip, it has so much more torque than what I feel like mine does. And I don't think I'm driving like any differently than I normally do on the street. It's just there is power, where the 2-liter I feel like doesn't have it. And it's like the biggest complaint I have with that car is it's just gutless. It's a Miata, so you expect it, but it would be nice to have more power, which this certainly feels like it's adding.
There's no corners here to really feel the suspension. My struggle with this car as a whole, as far as selling it, is that it's a very rare combination, but it's a very undesirable combination to most Miata people, because Miata people are going to want the lightest weight GT, so they're going to want the LSD and 6-speed, but they're not going to want the power hardtop, the heated seats, Bose, all that stuff. They couldn't care less. But for a lot of people, they don't want the hardtop. But if you're like the very narrow segment of people that want a car like this is like college students who can only have one car and want to autocross every now and then, but also want to road trip to see their parents. And the hardtop is a lot nicer on the highway.
Yeah, I mean, I drive mine with the philosophy of never having the top up. So even when I'm on the highway, I'm top down. And actually, I did a longer, like 2-hour drive a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I'm curious, let me put the top up and see if it's any better. And it's actually worse with the top up on the soft top, because it's just louder. You don't get any of the wind noise, but you get all the rattles from the top and everything else. So
yeah,
I can definitely see it. I mean, I think as a street car, I see the appeal of the hardtop, but I never have the top up. So for me, I fall into that Miata nerd category of give me the lightest and simplest and most basic Miata I can have.
I think I've had this car since 2018.
It's been a while.
I think. So this is the longest I've ever owned a car.
That's pretty impressive. And if it wasn't for COVID, it would have been gone much sooner.
Well, if it wasn't for the engine blowing, it probably would have been gone much sooner, because when I got the Corvette, I was like, okay, the Corvette kind of superseded this.
Yeah.
And now I've sold the Corvette before this, go figure. Oh, yeah. That video won't be out yet. This video's coming out before the Corvette one.
Spoilers.
Okay. You should be able to get on in here, man. All the way to red line. Or not.
I'm not an 8. I don't go to red line on the daily. It's so much faster. It is so much faster. Like, don't get me wrong, having owned a Mustang GT, having driven properly fast cars, like, a Miata is never going to be fast, but it is a noticeable difference. It is noticeably more torque, more power. It's different. Oh,
You've got another gear.
Going to 6. Mine doesn't even have 6 gears.
So 60 miles an hour at 6 to put your foot down, and it actually accelerates.
Hey.
Yeah, look at that. That was it went up 5 miles an hour in less than 10 seconds.
And I can imagine. I mean, I haven't actually done a track day in my Miata, but when I had my Scion FRS, I mean, that was the thing I hated about it the most. Is just you get onto a big long straightaway and there's nothing in that tank. There's no power.
I guess I'll just sit here.
This feels better than even that car did, though. I'm sure it's about the same, if not the Scion is probably more power. Certainly more power. I don't know if it's more torque, because I went from the Scion to this, or to my Miata, and it's just a better experience. It's a better drivable experience, especially on the street. But Miata is Miata. It gets better when you add power.
Yeah, go figure.
It's like the Miata has always been the car that is such a great platform that you just wish had 50 more horsepower. The 2.5 solves it.
Yeah.
And they're so cheap to get. Like, for me, the only reason I'm not seeking to do a 2.5 swap myself is my car works. I guess I should have gone that way, but you know, if my car ever does blow up its motor, I'm definitely replacing it with a 2.5. It just makes sense. It's easy enough. You get immediately more power, more torque, a better driving experience. Not that the driving experience is bad to begin with. You're not adding complexity of going and turbocharging it.
Yeah.
And then having all the turbocharger parts that might break. That, you know, obviously if you're a do-it-yourself kind of guy that loves to work on cars, you don't necessarily mind that. But if you're just looking for the experience of a fun-to-drive car that just works, this is a better option.
Yeah, because the beauty of it is you end up with a stock engine doing stock engine things. It's going to be as reliable as a Ford Fusion.
Yeah.
Probably probably more so because the transmission's better.
Right.
All right, well, thanks for coming out, giving your impressions.
Thanks for letting me rip in your Miata.
Now you're going to be dissatisfied with...
I'm going to hate it. It's going to be so slow.
Going to get some of that like liquid glass that they use during Cash for Clunkers and just kind of add some in the next oil change.
Oh no!
Oh, darn.
My motor went. I guess I need a 2.5 now.
I wanted a good visual of just how much faster the 2.5 is, so we lined up and did a quick first gear rolling pull, but I forgot one of the details of the 2.5 is that it means you don't have any traction anymore. So I just got to stare at a blinking traction control light until we tried again from second gear, which was far more conclusive. Well, there you go then, the 2.5 Miata. If you're in the market for an enthusiast car, it might sound crazy for me to suggest to you that you go buy a blown motor, 15-year-old sports car, a motor, and then go pay a shop to swap it. But like I said, any shop can do this stuff. And the end result is an absolute sports car bargain. But if you don't want to do all that work, you don't actually have to, because I'm selling this one right now. It has a lot of other upgrades aside from the engine. NC3 center console from the third facelift of these. It's a little bit plusher. CarPlay radio, Coney struts, Progress Technology springs, RX-8 yellow dot sway bars. And on top of that, it is a loaded Gran Turismo. So it's got HIDs, a limited slip, 6-speed transmission, proximity keys, of which I have 2, heated seats, Bose, the super nifty power hardtop, which I really like since this was my daily driver when I had it. We also have cruise control, auto up and down windows. There's lots to like here. I also have this turbo kit, which I bought because the 2.5 also has lower compression than the 2.0, which makes it ideal for boost. This kit isn't actually sold anymore. It's the Dynotronics One Gold base kit without a turbo, so it has sensors, injectors, a ton of piping, intercoolers. The other parts are in there, I think. They're in some of these boxes. Since it doesn't have a turbo, I have a Chinese Max Speeding Rods turbo sitting around for it that I was going to use because I kind of wanted a turbo that wasn't super well matched so I would get the super fun lag, because street car. Also, I have a set of RX-7 hollow spoke wheels, FD RX-7 wheels, wrapped in some very perished RE71Rs. There's not a lot of life left in these, and I think they have a slow leak, but the wheels look fantastic. They poke a little bit more and it looks really good. So if you're interested in this car, send me an email at contact@100percentjake.com. I really need to get about 10 grand out of it because I've been having quite a bit of trouble with my house. You may have noticed the siding is pretty bad. It's actually the old siding, when it was put on over new siding, and then it wasn't done correctly, so water was able to get behind it and rot out the siding underneath the cedar siding, and potentially also rot out the house itself. So that needs done to the tune of several tens of thousands of dollars. And then as I was getting ready to have that done, my sewer went out. So that was $5,500, no working sewer in my house for about a week, and an inch of standing sewage in my basement that had to be dealt with. And they had to bring out chisels and jackhammers and stuff. It was a really good time. Fortunately, that's fixed now. But yeah, I'm selling a few of the cars right now. That's not to mention the shop, which is kind of tier 2 of my home improvement plans, is to finally get the shop addressed, but that's not going to be till next spring or so. And of course, big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for sticking it out with me through this time of not making as many videos, since I've been really busy lately. And of course, they got to see this video early and they get a direct message line to me, I guess. I try to respond to all the comments and messages I get on Patreon, so you know, there's that. And also they get their name over here, or over here, wherever I decide to put it in the edit. Thanks for watching.